Hi! Are you looking for an easy watercolor project to try? Well, then you've come to the right place. Today we're going to paint a lotus flower. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome to Letitia Houston Art, where I'm spreading a little light to the world through the canvas. So today's video is a step-by-step guide on how to paint a lotus flower. So today we're going to try something a little bit different, and we're going to paint outdoors. Well, I'm going to paint outdoors. You can paint outside or inside, whatever you want to do. I just thought that it's really lovely to be part of nature, which is my favorite place to be, and we're painting a lotus flower, so it's a win-win. So before we get started, if you have not seen my introductory videos for watercolor, where there's two of them, one is exploring wet in wet techniques and the other one is exploring wet on dry techniques for watercolor. I would highly recommend you check those out first, just so we've got a bit of groundwork before we get started with our lotus flower. So it's kind of a bit experimental. We're going to try a few different techniques at the end. I hope you like it and enjoy it and you find it easy to follow. Let me know how you go with it, and I will see you for the next video, because we'll have much more to do, much more creative fun, and many more tips and tricks and cool stuff. So let's get painting. So we're ready to start, creatives. So this time I'm using a board. It's just easier to work on and just gives you a flat surface. So again, we're going to use masking tape to secure our project. Just makes it a lot easier and creates a nice little border as well when you get started. So here's our lotus flower, just so you've got another look at it. I'll include a link below as well to the picture, so that you can access it and print it out and use it as a reference. So we've got all our tools. Here's the beautiful setting that I'm working in today, Mother Nature. We're going to start with sketching out our lotus flower. So I'm just using a normal HB pencil. Just make sure you give yourself enough room so that you can put the stem of the flower on the page. And we just want to do a nice soft outline. Here's checking against the reference. So we're ready to start. We're going to try one of the techniques that we've learned, which is wet on wet, where you wet your page first with your brush. I'm using a round brush to start with, and the color is Permanent Rose. So we just want to mix a little bit from our watercolor discs. Not too much water on the page. We just want to be able to cover the space of one petal. So we put our water on our page. I should probably be a little bit quicker with it, but never mind. And see how the pigment of the watercolor just follows the pool of water that you've created. And you just follow the outline of your petal and fill in the space. I'm using a round brush because it's got a detailed tip, helps you cover a larger space. So the bigger the space, the bigger the brush that you use. So this is the first layer. So when you look at the photo, you can see that the three petals that lie on the outside of the lotus are quite dark. This is just our base. So watercolor takes a lot of layers. So we just want to prepare it and create a base of color first. Just one petal down. Really nice effect when you use a wet on wet. But now we're going to try it just so you can see the difference, the wet on dry. Wet on dry gives you more of a flat wash look, provided that you smooth out your colour in the section that you're working on. so you can see the difference. When you use a wet on wet technique, the water creates its own highlights. So you can combine techniques for your petals. So I picked the lotus flower because we're in a new year. So it's 2019. Lotus flower is associated with rebirth, a resurrection of sorts. To me, I feel like it's a symbol of hope, a symbol of purity, beauty, and grace. So this next petal, you can kind of see that you can just see the outline of this. So we're going to use a darker colour, less water, and we're going to use our pulling technique. Dip your brush in pure water and you just pull out from the edges lightly, so it kind of creates a blurry effect and helps blend it out. And then you just slowly fill in the middle with a little bit of colour. Keep it fairly light to start with, just so you get a feel for it. So again, on this petal, just using our pulling technique again and filling in the space. I'm using a different brush. I'm using a smaller brush. I've used 3 brushes for this tutorial. So I've got a medium-sized round brush that allows you to work in large spaces, but also helps you do sweeping strokes and more detailed. And then I've got your smaller detail brushes, one smaller than the other. So I'm just alternating between the 3. So this will probably take you about, I don't know, you want to give yourself an hour and a half at least, especially when you're just beginning. Quite meditative working with watercolor. It's very relaxing, and even more relaxing since we're painting a flower, right? So I'd love to hear what other creative projects you guys are working on, or whether you plan to be more creative this year. So I've kind of skipped forward on the video. You can work at your own pace and pause the video when you need to. Check back on your photo and see how you're tracking. So you can see it's starting to take shape now. We're looking good. Still using my small brush. Underneath you can see some small petals, so I'm using less water and more pure colour. So you just want to take your time and enjoy the process. It's interesting working outdoors because you never know what's going to happen. You could have flies come across your painting. You'd have the wind blow past. It's really nice to hear the birds singing though, and just to be outdoors amongst nature. A different way to work. So I'm switching to the smaller brush, just starting to add a little bit of detail now. So just so you can get a look at the colours, the palette I'm working with. So the darker colour that we're going to come back in on the inside, I guess they're the outside petals. I'm using Alizarin Crimson, I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. So we've got Alizarin Crimson, Permanent Rose. So I'm back to using my larger brush, the medium brush. And we're just going to start layering now. Less water. And I'm adding in light. So I'm leaving some spaces as they are with the Permanent Rose showing through. I'm using a wet on dry technique here. You see it's starting to take shape now. Just slowly adding in my colour. So you can notice on the reference photo that there's a lot of really fine lines on each individual petal. So when you come back at the end, if you want to add these really fine lines, you just use a really small detail brush with very little water. Make sure your layers are completely dry before you try to do this. That's the thing about watercolor, you have to be patient and let the layers dry in between. I mean, you can speed up the process by using a hairdryer. The thing is, with the hairdryer it tends to crinkle the paper. Personally, I like to let it dry naturally and then just come back or work on another section and let that layer dry. If you use a little less water, you don't have to wait so long for your layers to dry in between. So this is super fun. I really like doing this lotus flower. I actually use a lot of ink for my outlines, so this is kind of my first time just working without using an outline, just keeping it softer. Quite nice. Might try to incorporate it a little more in my work. So you can see those petals. Now we're looking at the photo, see how they're standing out now. We're starting to get there. You can notice on the left-hand petal how there's a dash of green at the bottom. I just left space for that. Now I want to add in some violet. I'm using a fine tip detail brush. And I'm using a wet on dry technique. I'm just popping the violet on the edges. Whoops! Oh, my crystals just rolled off. Working on a slope, that's what happens. So once you've got your flower sort of mapped out, we've got the basics outlined. We just want to work on the basic principles of this lotus flower today. Now we're going to start working on the stem. So for the stem, we're using a sap or a leaf green. And one little tip for when you work on a stem to make it have more of a 3D and rounded effect is you work your brush horizontally to give it a tubular effect, so it really feels like a stem. So you work across, pull up, and then work across horizontally. And just work up slowly, pull your brush up, straight line, vertical, and then pull across horizontally. And you just keep working till you connect with your flower. So we're going to work a few of the shadows that underneath the petals of the flower. So you could either use a viridian if you have it, or like an emerald green. Oh, we've got a fly off my painting. Just to highlight. So far we're looking good. Let me know how it's going for you. So we're just going to do one little last experimental technique. Kind of adds a nice effect to the painting. We're going to do a drip technique. So what you want to do is have a decent amount of watercolor with your medium round brush because it holds more water. It's more effective than a smaller brush. And we just want to continue to add water on top until you've got a nice little bead or water droplet. Just place it wherever you like, wherever you want the drip effect. Make sure you can move your board, because what we're going to do is stand it upright and let it drip down the page. So once we've got our little drops in place, got them where we want them, change your colour up. I've just added the hues of the flower, so I've got a permanent rose here, some violet. If you want a lighter colour, add more water, just let it swell down the page. So what you can do is you can just pull or feather out some of the drips that you've made if they're running straight down the page and you want to just smooth them out a little bit. So that's pretty much what we've done today. Look at that, your first little watercolour project. Ta-da!